En direct du plateau TV de la Galerie des Solutions pour une émission consacrée à l'industrie agroalimentaire. Objectif zéro émission fossile de CO2 dans l'industrie agroalimentaire européenne. Le projet Green Foods, c'est de cela dont nous avons parlé pendant une heure. L'industrie agroalimentaire européenne, vous le savez, dispose d'un potentiel important pour améliorer son efficacité énergétique et accroître l'utilisation des énergies renouvelables en réduisant les coûts de production et les émissions de carbone des combustibles fossiles. La compétitivité mondiale de l'industrie peut être encouragée et assurée, en particulier, et ce sera le focus un peu de cette émission, pour les PME. Green Foods a développé un concept de branche et plusieurs outils et ressources pour les PME de l'industrie agroalimentaire européenne, ceci afin d'améliorer leur efficacité énergétique et promouvoir l'utilisation des énergies renouvelables. Le projet se base sur des audits énergétiques, des formations spécifiques au secteur en matière d'efficacité énergétique et d'énergie renouvelable, et surtout le développement d'un système de financement sur mesure pour les PME de l'industrie agroalimentaire qui veulent bien évidemment s'engager dans la démarche. Pour parler de ce sujet, je reçois Damien Siès, qui est directeur adjoint à la direction production énergie durable de l'ADEME. Damien, bonjour et bienvenue. Juste à côté de lui, Nicolas Nat, qui est le directeur général d'Internat Energy Solutions, qui est un BE, un bureau de conseil, plutôt un bureau de conseil en ingénierie indépendant, qui est établi en France, mais qui travaille aussi au Canada, en Chine, et qui est spécialisé dans la maîtrise et l'optimisation de la consommation d'énergie, l'efficacité énergétique, le diagnostic, l'audit, les énergies renouvelables, la qualité environnementale des bâtiments et le bilan carbone. Voilà, une palette très large. Et puis face à lui, et à mes côtés à gauche, Christophe Brunner, qui est directeur du département process industriel et système énergétique de AEE Intec. En fait, ce AEE est en Autriche l'Institut de technologie durable, acteur majeur dans le domaine de la recherche appliquée, et il est accompagné par Jürgen Fluch, qui est chef de projet du département process industriel et système énergétique. Voilà, je crois que les présentations sont faites. On va commencer avec vous, peut-être Nicolas Nat, pour contextualiser un petit peu le sujet et surtout, comprendre comment est né Green Foods, comment il est porté juridiquement et financièrement.
Très bien, merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Et afin de faciliter un petit peu la discussion, je vais peut-être passer en anglais par solidarité pour nos amis autrichiens. Just to explain in a few words Green Foods and why we have decided to develop it in France and why we think it's important to develop it in France, and also to kind of explain the European context. It's incredible network from Europe, that a network of experts financed by the European Commission. And when we had discussed with Jürgen and Christophe the implementation in France, we thought that it was a very good opportunity to develop it here in France. So perhaps Jürgen can say a few words about the context, the European level, and kind of the history of the project. We'd be more apt to discuss this.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Nicola. Yeah, I think you have to mention that about 270,000 companies in Europe are related to the beverage and the food industry, and 99% of them are SMEs, so small and medium-sized companies. So this was the original idea, to work in this field, to make a program to support them in order to reach more renewable energy, to reach a more efficient production line in this field. And just to give you a few numbers, in general, 25% of the whole energy consumption is related to industry. And if you have then a look, about 60% of this industry energy consumption is used in these countries like Italy, Spain, like Great Britain, like France, like Germany. So they are really the big consumers of energy in this field. And if you just imagine, if we can reach this target of 20% of energy efficiency and 70% of renewable energy in this field, this would mean a reduction of 35% of this whole energy what is used at the moment in these industry sectors. And to give you a number here, it's about 125,000 gigawatt hours per year what could be reduced in this field. And so this was, let's say, the target or the goal, what we said, okay, let's do here something, make here a support for these SMEs in order to reach this reduction of greenhouse gas emissions.
Oui, Christophe, en fait, c'est bien la somme des initiatives, puisqu'on parle là d'un secteur qui est atomisé, avec énormément de petites entreprises, c'est bien la somme des actions des petites entreprises qui va permettre de bénéficier d'un gain important en termes de réduction de gaz à effet de serre, d'économie d'énergie et de développement, effectivement, d'énergie renouvelable. Hein. Alors, il y a un petit temps de latence.
Yeah, perhaps if I can just fill in here. I think for me, as a French expert in this field, it was very important to have access to a European network and a European platform. And I think this gives us access to certain expertise that we have at the European level. In certain countries have different kinds of expertise, and to share the best practices at the European level, I think is a fundamental part of the green foods philosophy and the green foods concept. Of course, I think there's a lot of things that are happening in Europe in different industries, in different agro-industries, and to be able to have access to the best practices and the very pragmatic approach that Green Foods has taken at the European level, I think is absolutely fundamental to the development of green foods in France and to increase energy efficiency in the agro-industry sector here. So,
maybe one word additional to this. Let's say the general idea of green foods came out of a national project in Austria. So I think what Nicola just mentioned, this importance, or this is the big possibility that the European Commission, which founded this project, supported this project, give the opportunity to make this knowledge exchange between different European countries in order to bring knowledge to other sides and vice versa.
Alors à ce stade, on peut déjà, oui, vous vouliez effectivement intervenir, pardon.
One thing I think before we can hear about a strategy in France from ADEME, I think what is very important is the big companies, the large companies, they have responsible persons really dealing with energy efficiency and renewables. Someone in the company who is responsible for it and who knows about it. But the challenge for the SMEs is really that they just don't have time to do this, to take care about it, because they have to think about the quality of the project, of the product. They have to take care about the resources where they come from. So energy is not their main focus in it. And the idea of Green Foods was to provide you information, to close this gap that we have identified here. And we have a lot of information now collected. We have a lot of best practice examples that are now available. So we need here the front runners, especially in the food and beverage industry. I think the challenge is that the companies really always take care about, okay, will this change the quality of my product in the future? And so this was the challenge, and by this we wanted to push the SMEs especially here.
Alors à ce stade, effectivement, je pense qu'on peut résumer. On a bien compris qu'il s'agissait d'un soutien technique, hein, d'un soutien de mécanique de financement, et puis bien sûr les échanges de bonnes pratiques avec WikiWeb. Alors je ne sais pas si on a effectivement l'image de cette plateforme digitale qui va nous être diffusée en régie, WikiWeb, qui nous permet effectivement, et qui permet à toutes les entreprises qui sont dans le dispositif d'aller chercher des bonnes pratiques en Allemagne, en Espagne, en Suisse, en Angleterre, etc. J'aimerais qu'on nous montre éventuellement une photo, enfin, ou une illustration de ce qu'est WikiWeb. Peut-être Nicolas nous en dire un mot.
Oui, alors je pense que c'est vraiment un élément clé de la méthodologie Green Foods. C'est ce concept de open source.
Voilà, ça fonctionne comme ça, en open source.
Tout à fait, c'est les meilleures pratiques à l'échelle européenne qui sont chiffrées. Et le constat, c'est de dire que s'il y a une laiterie, par exemple, en Allemagne ou une laiterie en France, ils vont avoir les mêmes problématiques. Et plutôt que de réinventer la roue, l'idée, c'est de bénéficier de ce retour d'expérience de terrain. Et je pense que le WikiWeb, c'est un outil vraiment formidable pour partager justement ces meilleures pratiques par sous-secteur.
Alors, rentrons maintenant dans le vif du sujet. Christophe, on imagine que je sois un industriel de l'industrie agroalimentaire. J'ai une société, une brasserie par exemple, on va dire. Donc, je rentre dans votre écosystème, dans votre démarche. Je veux bien sûr que mon produit garde la même qualité. Et puis, je veux baisser mes émissions de CO2. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il faut que je fasse?
Yeah, so in general, a standardized process to reach this. So it is a European standard, what we also developed in another European project together. And this follows several steps. So the first step, of course, is to have a very good comprehensive picture of your production. And also the use of the energy. And this doesn't only mean that you know your bills, your electricity bills or your gas bills. It also means that you really should know how much energy to use for which production process at which temperature level. So this is the first step. Second step is to optimize the system, to reduce your energy consumption, energy efficiency as a keyword. This is done in a two-line approach. First, to make technology optimization. This means use the best available technology on the market for the processes in order to reduce energy and reduce the temperatures of the process you need. And the second approach here is system optimization. This means taking energy where you have to cool something down, this energy, and use it via heat exchanger to heat it up on another way. So then you reduce your primary energy part of your production line. And with this reduction, then you go further and look which kind of renewable energy you can use. And this means in the future, it's not only one energy source, one renewable energy source, it's always a hybrid system what you have to use. So it means, for example, solar thermal energy for lower temperatures. At higher temperatures, you can use maybe biomass, like wood or biogas. You can use heat pumps, etc., etc. So I think this is a crucial point. It will not be like it's at the moment. You just use natural gas or oil for your production and producing hot water or steam. It will be always a hybrid system, different energy, renewable energy sources in order to get your energy.
Alors, ce qu'on comprend tout de suite, disais-je, c'est qu'effectivement, ça signifie que les process de l'industriel vont évoluer. Donc, d'où la nécessité de financer et d'investir, parce que on met un process hybride, effectivement, voire on change le process, mais ça a un impact fort quand même sur l'organisation de l'entreprise.
Yeah. So. This is a crucial point. So if you can imagine, a lot of processes are running more or less similar since hundreds of years. If you go to brewery, for example, they are producing beer same like it is 200 years ago, more or less. Just changing a little bit the technology. And this is a crucial point. We need new technologies. We need this so-called, as a keyword, process intensification technologies. This means combining different technologies in one step, having more continuous processes. Not only filling a vessel, heat it up, cool it down again. So these are all these steps what loses energy, where you really loses energy and is consuming a lot of energy. The need in the future in the production line means new technology for the processes, but with the same quality of product. The beer must be the same at the end. So if you change your processes and the beer doesn't taste anymore, then no one will buy it, and then this will be, let's say, not the right direction.
Ouais, comme on dit en français, ce sera la double peine. Nicolas, souvent les petites entreprises n'ont pas les mêmes accès à la connaissance et à ce qui existe, comme les grandes compagnies. Qui dois-je contacter? Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez m'apporter concrètement? À qui dois-je m'adresser?
Alors, there's a few things. Before we get to the introduction of ADEME and kind of the fundamental tools that ADEME has in France and the technical support that it has. The green food concept has a virtual competence center. And the virtual competence center, the key thing to facilitate the transition for companies and SMEs that are interested in energy efficiency in the agro sector, to facilitate them and give them access to the network of experts. I think that's a really key fundamental thing, to facilitate the transition to energy efficiency. And the other thing is that we organize trainings, and actually we had our first training in France in Bordeaux in October. And it was a very successful training because we had a lot of different types of companies that participated. Of course, the wine sector was represented in Bordeaux. And there, I think that's where the virtual competence center really takes its place as a facilitator to bring in complement, of course, with the teams of ADEME, who are also there to bring their expertise and to value the tools that have been developed. I think this is kind of an additional approach to have a European level of expertise.
Très intéressant, effectivement. Donc on comprend bien que Green Foods a une vision très européenne, très macroscopique, et qu'on passe effectivement par les agences, quand elles existent dans certains pays, ou les ministères en charge de ces problématiques-là. Donc si je comprends bien, Damien Siès, on s'adresse, alors à Bordeaux, on s'adresse à la direction régionale de l'ADEME, finalement, qui va être le point d'entrée. Alors concrètement, on sait que l'ADEME, bien sûr, a apporté le bilan carbone, qui est la base de tout, on va dire. Comment ça se passe après à l'ADEME? Comment vous accompagnez? Comment vous mettez dans cette démarche? Comment vous entrez dans cette démarche pour aussi échanger avec les autres pays européens?
Yeah, just a few general words before to say that I completely agree with everything that was said so far, and food and beverage industry is a very good example of what can be done overall in the industry in terms of energy efficiency, renewables. And France is particularly interested in that sector because food and beverage industry is big in France. And also it's mostly small businesses that everywhere on the territory. There's not one region bigger than the other. Every region has its specificities. And there's a lot to do. Just one figure to mention that. ADEME says that by 2030, overall in the industry, there was a potential of a 20% gain in energy efficiency. Overall, that is energy consumption per produced tons of anything, whatever you produce, whether it's metal, cars, or food. And for food and beverage industry, that potential is 30%. That is to say, in a way, in energy efficiency, food industry is behind the average in a way. So you can try to, even though in some other fields it's ahead. For example, it's ahead in terms of using biomass because there's a lot of biomass on site, and we see at ADEME a lot of the subsidies we give to factories to promote biomass instead of fossil fuel, for example, goes to food industry. But in terms of energy efficiency, it's overall behind, and 2/3 of that potential, that 30%, are actually things that exist, solutions that are already, that you can buy already, that are on the shelf somewhere. And so you can wonder why. Why doesn't it go faster? So one of the answers is, of course, the cost of energy. For a long time, it was probably not high enough, but it's changing. I mean, now for food, of course, I don't know, chemistry, energy is a lot in their added value. So of course, they've already done a lot of things over years. For food industry, it's getting big, but it's just getting there. So now more and more companies realize that they have to do something. And I would, when you ask how to change your process, a lot of the things, the first steps you have to do, don't require any change. It's a good thing to wonder how you can optimize your process overall, but a lot of the things you can do now are very simple things. Then, of course, to answer directly your question, there's not one general answer. And the key thing you have to remember is the process has to be smart. In terms, you have to find the right solution for the questions that are exactly the question that you're wondering, you're asking yourself on a specific site, given what you're producing, how much, how during the year, how is it planned? Is it all year long? Is it only summer, only winter? So all your questions are specific. And in terms of help, it means, yes, going to the local level. I can't give a general answer for every company. So ADEME has specialists in every region, and they can help. Once you've done that first step, which is realize that you have to do something on your site, in your factories, and you start wondering what to do and how to do it, then you can ask for help. It can be ADEME, it can be other people, it can be people, it can be like what was exposed before. It can be your local energy supplier because they're trying to prove that they're smart and that they're not overselling energy. It can be a lot of different people. The first step is usually understanding, as Wout said, understanding what you're consuming, what you're buying, so smart metering, monitoring, and comparing it to yourself. So ADEME publishes a lot of guides and guidelines and benchmarks. And then you have to start getting into the solutions. Okay, now that I know that I'm worse than my neighbors, for example, or worse than my competitors, how do I improve? And then there's an array of solutions between energy efficiency, using the right renewable source, whether it's solar, if there's enough sun there, whether it's geothermal, if you happen to actually sit on a positive area for that, if you have energy just below your feet. It can be biomass in a lot of cases. So you have to find the right solutions, and ADEME can help you in every step. The first step, knowing what to do. We can subsidize the first audit. And then if you actually have to invest, for example, in a biomass solution or geothermal power plant, then also a share of that can be subsidized by ADEME.
Oui, dans l'industrie agroalimentaire française, qui est bien sûr très très importante, on a des exemples, hein, par exemple les réseaux de chaleur, hein, dont on peut... réseau de chaleur pour soi-même, sur une grosse unité, réseau de chaleur entre plusieurs entreprises de l'industrie agroalimentaire, la méthanisation, qui est en plein développement en France, a beaucoup de retard par rapport à nos voisins allemands ou belges, mais effectivement, ou autrichiens, effectivement, vous avez raison, mais la méthanisation est vraiment une piste très importante, et le biogaz pour l'industrie agroalimentaire. Christophe, vous vouliez rajouter quelque chose?
I just want to add a few words to what you said before. I totally underline this, what you said. It's compared maybe to, let's say, chemical industry. Food industry is a little bit behind. I think, from my point of view, there are two things why it is like this. On the one hand, food industry are dealing with raw material with its natural raw material. So it's sometimes, from the technological point of view, more difficult to be more efficient because the raw materials are changing. You have to adapt your process on these raw materials, things like this. So this is the technology point of view. And the second one is an economical point. As I mentioned in the beginning, 99% are small and medium-sized enterprises. So they don't have this access to funds, to grants, etc., etc. So they have to be, let's say, focus on the production itself and day-by-day business. And here it is really important to give them support, also not only by tools, but also by financial issues. So this is what I wanted to add.
Alors justement, on va revenir effectivement aux problématiques des PME. Jürgen, on va prendre l'exemple encore une fois de la petite brasserie ou peut-être du petit producteur de foie gras, hein, dans l'industrie agroalimentaire. Qu'est-ce que je peux investir au minimum, puisque j'ai pas forcément mon banquier qui me suit et de la trésorerie suffisante? Quel est l'investissement minimum pour les bénéfices et les résultats minimum pour faire une première étape, pour franchir une première marche?
Yeah, well, this is always the question. First, the company has to be motivated to do an audit, as we call it, an assessment. Also, highlighting the figures that you mentioned, in the food and beverage industry, they normally spend in the range of 5 to 12% of their production costs only for energy. So the pressure in the past was not that big. But now, especially SMEs realize that this is the part they can really influence, because they're taking care about the quality of the resources, but they can't influence. If they buy flowers somewhere, they have to pay it. But the energy demand, the energy consumption is something they can influence, and by this is the main motivation. But the next question is, of course, the audit. Why should a company really perform an audit? Because in the beginning, you just don't know what is the output. Will there be really savings? Is it worth to invest here? And generally, we have here a two-way approach, let's say it like this. Based on this AEE project that we had, Einstein 1 and Einstein 2, this was a collection of a methodology how an assessment should be. If an audit is performed linked to this methodology, then the company really knows what's to be expected here. And the minimum output of this investment, it's not only investments money, it's also time, because large companies, they know about their process flows, they know about the energy consumption, but SMEs, they just don't know about it, and somebody has to take care about it. So this is time consuming, this is money consuming. So what can we offer? In the first step, it's to get a very rough overview, make a basic check, as we call it, to identify if there is already a potential. But what is the minimum output of this assessment is whether at least the company then knows, okay, this kind of energy is consumed in my company, I have to pay this amount of money for it. The next output is that the equipment, the company should know about the efficiency. Right now, I think the SMEs in the beginning, they don't know about it. So what is the efficiency of my boiler? How many % of the energy that I bring in my boiler is then really transported to the processes? And the next output is then also the share of the energy consuming processes. I think in most food and beverage industries, SMEs, they just don't know what is the main energy consuming process. So I have a share. Let's say I have 30% of the energy is used by this process, 30% by the other process, because by this you can start with identifying the alternatives. I won't start caring about small processes, I will start with the big ones. And this is a main output that I have from an assessment to see this energy flow in my company. So this is summed up in a tool, a methodology, is the Sankey diagram. So this really highlights in graphical way, visualized, the energy that is brought into my company, going to the processes used via the equipments, and also a flow sheet is a minimum output. So the company then really knows, okay, I bring in my energy, I bring in my resources, and then step by step what is really happening in my company. So this is creating the baseline, as we call it. So this minimum output, if a company spends money, spends time on this, creating this baseline evaluation of the status quo is the minimum output. And this, as a next step, is also the basis for this energy management system. So in the future, at least the company compare these figures from year to year or from month to month, and by this really sees, okay, has this changed? Is there a fluctuation? Somehow to really see what is going on here.
Oui, parce qu'il faut le préciser, on est quand même sur de longues focales. Hein. On a l'impression de parler de quelque chose qui est facile, hein, qu'on peut faire en claquant des doigts, mais on est sur du long terme. Donc mon premier bénéfice, si je comprends bien, c'est de comprendre, de savoir pour agir éventuellement si les moyens sont là et si effectivement l'opportunité se présente. Alors justement, je voudrais, Christophe, et je reviendrai vers vous, Damien, juste après, comprendre un peu quelles sont les énergies renouvelables qu'on peut utiliser dans l'industrie agroalimentaire. On parle beaucoup du solaire, ça paraît le plus évident, hein, parce que si on fait de la géothermie, c'est un peu plus compliqué. Le solaire, on pose des plaques, on connecte. Alors, effectivement, on bypasse la chaudière, mais ça paraît, dans l'imaginaire, plus facile. Et pourtant, il n'y a pas tellement d'installations de solaire. Alors, quelles sont les possibilités que l'industrie agroalimentaire a et quelles sont les possibilités dont elle dispose?
Yeah, there are several possibilities. Maybe I show you on one example. We did this example of a medium-sized brewery, which is situated in Austria. It is linked to the Heineken Group. And we developed with them a vision. It started in 2006, and we were sitting together on a table like this and said, okay, the brewmaster told me, we really want to go for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And then we said, okay, let's define the vision to be 100% renewable after several years in this direction. And I'm very proud that we could follow this whole approach together with this brewery. And since let's say since 1 month ago, they are now really 100% renewable. They produce electricity and heat by renewable energy. And just to explain you what we changed here, what are the main steps. So we started following the approach of an energy audit, of course, with a really monitoring concept, an idea where the energy goes to, which processes, etc. Then we started with the so-called low-hanging fruits. It means insulating pipes, optimizing heat exchangers, adding new heat exchangers in the system. The next step was then to think about new technology. There was an integration of one process, which is more or less the main process in the beer production, to cook the wort, and which is then converted into beer. And this technology could, they use now a new technology here, and so they really could reduce more or less by 30% of the energy consumption for this process by this new technology. And then we did these energy efficiency measures, and then the next step was to think about a hybrid system of different renewable energy sources. First step was they had the possibility to use waste heat from a neighbor country. So what you mentioned before, district heating networks. This is a small district heating network. There's a sawmill as a neighbor country. They are producing electricity with burning this wood, and they have waste heat. And this waste heat, they are selling it to the brewery. So with this waste heat, a certain amount of energy could be covered. Next step was to use the energy what is in the wastewater. The wastewater, there's a certain amount of organic compounds inside, to convert these organic compounds into biogas and use this biogas into the boiler. So this was the next step. With this, out of the wastewater, with this energy, they could cover about 10% of the whole energy consumption. And they have additional possibility, they have purified water. So these are two goals in one. So, then the next step was think about solar thermal energy. Solar thermal energy, you have to know, depends very much, the efficiency of it depends very much on the temperature level. So if you have lower temperature, the efficiency of the collectors are higher. So we had to identify a certain process, certain integration point where we can integrate this hot water, which is produced by solar, into the process. And we did this. It is the first step in the brewing process, the so-called mashing process. By changing the process itself, we integrated a new heat exchanger. This allows us to integrate solar thermal, and so we can provide part of this process by solar thermal. So about 20% is covered by solar thermal in this way. That is not the whole story. The last step was then, and this is, let's say, the biggest amount what it's covered now, to use the so-called waste what they are producing. It's the spent grains, so it's the residues of the malt, yeah, from the brewing process. Normally, this is sold to farmers as feed for animals, and we developed the concept to convert this into biogas. So now they have a biogas plant on the site, convert grains into biogas. This biogas is used in the CHP, as a combined heat and power plant, producing electricity, also heat, and a certain amount of this biogas directly produces steam. And with this whole concept on biogas, on district heating, on solar thermal, now they are 100% renewable. And so these are, let's say, this hybrid system, what I mentioned before, means, okay, really a good combination regarding also the integration depending on the temperature levels. This is then an optimized system for a company.
Voilà, on comprend bien que c'est la combinaison de plusieurs choses avec plusieurs étapes. Vous avez remarqué que Christophe et Jürgen viennent d'Autriche et qu'ils prennent souvent l'exemple des brasseries et que moi tout à l'heure je parlais de foie gras. Encore qu'une bonne bière blonde, une bonne pinte de bière blonde avec quelques tosses de foie gras, ça doit être pas mal aussi. Christophe, vous vouliez rajouter quelque chose et j'irai vers vous, Damien, juste après.
Oui, alors c'était juste pour just to rebound on the solar thermal sector. I think it's an absolutely huge potential that hasn't quite developed in France, and I think there's a number of reasons for that, and perhaps we can discuss with ADEME. But one of the fundamental things, I think, is that industrial groups need to see that it's happening and that they're not necessarily in experimentation. And so that's one of the values of the Green Food Network, is to say that it is happening, and it's happening in Austria, it's happening right across the border from us. And there are some great examples of how solar thermal process heat can be applied to very different types of industries. And I think ADEME has a very strong role, and it's had a role on sensitizing industrial groups and also providing the funding mechanisms through the Fonds Chaleur that you'll most likely discuss. And another point that I wanted to bring up is the kind of competition with the solar photovoltaic sector, which is taking more and more of a key role in kind of being a competitor, in fact, to solar thermal. And in the Aquitaine region, in the southwest of France, there has been some incentives from the regional government to subsidize auto-consumption projects. And I think this is another source of solar development that is absolutely key for industrial groups, apart, of course, from the heat recovery, which I'm sure you can say a few more words about.
Damien Siège, je rappelle que vous êtes directeur adjoint à la direction production énergie renouvelable de l'ADEME. Alors en fait, j'ai envie de dire, vous êtes un peu victime de votre succès. Il y a de nombreuses années que vous faites la promotion des ENR. On a une possibilité de mix énergétique très grande en France. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qui est particulièrement mis en avant, un type d'énergie renouvelable qui est particulièrement mis en avant aujourd'hui? On voit beaucoup d'éoliennes, on voit beaucoup de panneaux photovoltaïques. On en est où?
Yeah, as you said, there's a lot of different energies, and as you said too, you exemplified the way it was presented, I think, in that example of that brewery, that there's a mix of different solutions and you have to adapt it to every situation, to what is a local resource. That the biggest change when you change from fossil fuel to renewable is that you don't have a universal solution that works everywhere. You have to find the local solution that works there or here, exactly where you are. That's the first point. For ADEME, I'd like to first remind you that the heat fund that was mentioned, that ADEME has, is basically subsidies to help renewable heat technologies, represents 25% of France's total objective for renewable development by 2020. 25% is only on heat, and we tend to forget that because often we hear renewable energy and we think renewable electricity, and we think about wind turbines, photovoltaics, everything, which are also important. ADEME is less directly involved in how they develop. It's a different system using feed-in tariffs, which is going to evolve. So there's one thing there, and so I'd like to focus on heat, on thermal renewable energy, if you don't mind. For example, solar that was mentioned. I agree with what you said about the reason why maybe it's not used enough in the industry. I think there's another reason, which is if you look at the thermal solar industry itself, and where we thought it would pick up and increase, and what is happening now, and what can be the future. And for a long time, a lot of people, including us, including ADEME, and the way we subsidize that thermal solar energy, focused on individuals and houses, domestic uses, which is a place where it's possible. There's a potential, but for some reason it's not really picking up in front. And there's also a competition between various solutions. And I think we all underestimated, collectively, not just ADEME, underestimated how we could use it for big installations, either district heating or industrial uses. And now we're refocusing the heat fund on that for thermal solar. We're trying to say, let's go for bigger projects at a time. So either for industrial uses or thermal solar energy directly into district heating. So that's one thing. Second key example, as you mentioned, and was also mentioned there, is heat loss or waste heat. It's a huge potential. Just one figure to remind to remind you what we're talking about. We estimate that 16% of the total energy consumption by industry in France is lost in effluents that are over 100 degrees. Over 100 degrees. It's not something that is not hot enough to use directly. It's like really hot. You could do something directly useful with that, something over 100 degrees. 16%. And food industry has its fair share, and that basically a sixth, let's say, of that total share for the industry. So ADEME published this year a specific guide on that subject for the first step, which is know what you're talking about and what can be done. And then for the last step, again, we refocused the heat fund on that specifically. And we made eligible to our financial helps not only renewables in the conventional meaning, but uses of heat loss, either towards the district heating or even within the same site. If you have several production lines, sometimes it can be really difficult to use the heat loss that you have somewhere and use it just 200 meters further in another line that would like to use that heat, but the investment is important. So that is now, since 2015, eligible to ADEME subsidies. And that's, again, something it's taking off very rapidly. In 2015, we just opened that line, and we had plenty of projects, and we hope to have plenty more in the coming years.
Merci pour ces précisions. Christophe, vous voulez rajouter quelque chose?
I just want to add one thing regarding the solar thermal part. Yeah? We had a very successful conference or event approximately 1 month ago in Montpellier in France. Yeah? Also ADEME was participating there, and Internat. And this was in the framework of the International Energy Agency implementing agreement for solar heating and cooling. I'm coordinating here a network, international network on solar process heat. And we identified, we developed with more than 50 experts worldwide here, different tools, concepts, how to support industry to increase the implementation of solar thermal in the industry on the one hand. And what I just want to mention, we also developed a database which is online, everyone free access to this database with existing implementations worldwide on solar industrial applications, solar thermal industrial applications. So you can have a look on different industry sectors, different technologies, solar thermal technologies, also costs, prices, systems costs are included here. And this gives you a good overview and a good overview of best practice examples worldwide.
Alors, je voudrais qu'on se recentre quelques instants sur Green Foods et revenir vers vous, Christophe. Vous parlez de financement. Parler de financement, donc le financement des investissements. Quels sont les... On va dire, je vais vous laisser mettre votre oreillette. Quelles sont, je dirais, les différentes marches en termes d'investissement et quels sont les temps de retour sur investissement quand un industriel décide effectivement de modifier son organisation et son installation?
So it's different, yeah? Let's say. In the energy efficiency part, the payback times could be very short. For lots. So it's if you install a heat exchanger, for example, then a payback time could be 1 year, 2 years, something like this. If you go to more complex systems, more complex technologies, new technologies for the process itself, this maybe will not pay off that quickly. Yeah? If you then go to renewable energy, then you have to calculate. I know, for example, for solar thermal, this can be in the range of from 6 years up to 9 years, 10 years payback time. But what is important here, I think we have to think or to change our thinking a little bit. I understand that industry thinks in terms of payback times, but what does this mean? It means that I want to have a payback because I'm maybe not sure to produce after 4 years on this site anymore. And what we try to communicate to them, and to give them more or less also a kind of guarantee that this technology holds longer than 3 years or 5 years, is to speak about energy prices. So this means you produce a certain amount of energy over a lifetime of your technology, and then you can convert this in a cost or in a price of your energy per kilowatt, for example. And then if you have a look here, for example, for solar thermal, then it's absolutely comparable. And very often it's below the cost of fossil fuels. And this for sure for the same price for 20 years, for example. So we really have to have a look on different technologies, different combinations of it, and this brings then a payback time or the cost of the renewables in total.
Yeah, if I can just add to this concept that I think we have to change the language mindset, and I totally agree with your analysis that we talk too much about return on investment, payback times, etc. And it's time, I think, to focus on new business models that will accelerate the development of renewable energies, especially in the industrial sector. And there are a number of business models that exist where we take away the risk of investment and we have third-party investments. And I think that funds like the Fonds Chaleur assist in this development, but there's also, I think, a necessity to develop new business models such as the ESCO model and other models that will alleviate the financial risk.
Yeah, I think that several the different notions can be used at the same time. As what said, for energy efficiency, payback time is still a fair question to ask yourself. And when I said earlier that in food industry we assessed that by 2030, 20% energy efficiency could be done in just with things that are already exist, solutions that are on shelf. Those solutions have a payback time that is less than 3 years. That's what we said by saying it's accessible, it's there, it's on the shelf, and it has a short payback time, and that's a huge potential. Then it's true that for some other investments, especially in renewable energy, often the payback time is, if you think in those terms, is longer, can be up to 10 years. And we certainly, to be honest, we certainly saw some projects being abandoned in the recent years because gas price, for example, was lower than expected at the beginning of a project, and so the companies change their mind and say, oh, after all, maybe gas won't be that expensive, I don't need to change now. But we also saw some companies still make the change, and you can ask yourself, why do some people give up? So you know why, and why do some people continue? Why do some companies continue? And often the answers reside in uncertainty and how to apprehend the future over a long period of time. For a lot of renewable energy, it can be difficult because most of what you pay is at the beginning is investment. But when you've done that, you're pretty much safe for the coming 20 years. Most prices are already behind you and most costs are behind you, and so you won't have big change of energy costs. You won't be that affected if fuel or gas takes off. And that's often a key consideration for factories, not just the cost, but knowing that for the future, you have minimized your risks and minimized uncertainty. That's also a very, very important factor.
Ah oui, avant de donner la parole à Jürgen, je résume, c'est des points d'étape. Là, on doit penser local, ça on l'a bien compris, avec différentes solutions, et surtout on doit penser à terme. Je parlais tout à l'heure de longue focale. Il faut effectivement, quand on parle d'énergie renouvelable, quelle que soit celle qu'on choisit, parler de temps long. Et non pas, je dirais, d'installation pour 5, 10 ou 15 ans. On s'inscrit dans la durée. Jürgen, vous vouliez rajouter quelque chose?
Yeah, I think this is also a great opportunity that we have here, because especially in SMEs in the food and beverage industry, they are very often family-owned. And so they really think in long periods, yeah. Of course, big companies, they really have to take care about energy costs, payback periods, but family-owned companies, and this is what is our experience based on a lot of projects that we have performed, that if we bring this information to these family-owned companies, to these SMEs, and really provide the information and show, okay, maybe there's a dairy in Austria, but we show an example that works in France or in Spain, and it really works, and they will go for it. And then they don't care about payback periods above 3 or 4 years. Yeah? And especially also here, some examples that from audits that we performed and where the companies really went for. For example, heat exchangers, so really using waste heat that we have in the food and beverage industry anyhow, I think sometimes here we have payback periods of only 5 to 6 months. So it's not years, it's months. And so the question for us is very often, we know that it works. This is not very innovative. It's just installing a heat exchanger using waste heat from, in the food and beverage industry, we have a lot of cooling demand, and everywhere we have cooling, we also have waste heat at a temperature level of, let's say, 50 to 80 degrees. At the same time, we have a heating demand for cleaning water, maybe for some space heating, so this perfectly matches. So the question for us, why don't the SMEs go for it? And what is our output? Our conclusion is that the information is just not there. So if we go there and tell the company, okay, you just install a heat exchanger here, then you will cover your complete heating demand. Just one example, we work together within the Green Foods project with a small bakery, and bakeries have a lot of cooling demand, and also they have waste heat from the ovens. And just using the waste heat covers the total heating demand for cleaning water, for sanitary water, and for space heating. So it is just an installation of, let's say, 3,000 euros for one heat exchanger, and it works. So we just have to push the companies and then provide information, and then we can go for it.
Merci Jürgen. Alors avant de conclure, je voudrais qu'on revienne quelques instants sur la formation. Est-ce que quand je souhaite être formé comme à Bordeaux là récemment, je dois avoir un responsable développement durable, ou est-ce que je peux moi en tant que chef d'entreprise, même si je n'y connais rien, venir suivre ces formations?
Alors, just to bounce back on what you were saying about sensitizing the actors that work inside the agro-industrial groups, they need to have a technical training. And the technical training, I think for us, was to be able to show them the methodologies and the tools that have been developed within the Green Foods Network, and to share the best practices also from ADEME, from the ground, in order to sensitize. Now, we did our first training in Bordeaux, and it was a very great success in last October. And we're planning to do another training with the support of ADEME as well, and COP de France in Lyon in the beginning of next year. And so I think what's very exciting is that the dynamic in France we're seeing is starting to take place. And I think there's a lot of potential for the development of the green foods concept, and to just come back to this idea of open source. And it's a living organism that kind of keeps getting more and more precise with time. As more examples come into this kind of open source network, then the best practice sharing very pragmatically. So for us, it's very exciting to be part of this network of experts, and I certainly look forward to being able to develop it further in France in the coming while.
Christophe.
Yeah, just a few additional words. So you mentioned network. So it was really our intention. So the project is over. It was finished now end of November. But what we want to do is a green food network for the future. And what does it mean? We have on the one hand these virtual energy competence centers, so these one-stop shops where companies get access to information, get access to information to experts, to technologies, etc., to tools. We also want to continue with the training, as Nicola already mentioned. This is a crucial point. The training there in the framework of this European energy management trainer education, so this AEE education concept. And it is already so, let's say, known that, for example, I have been 1 month ago to Chile. In Chile, they want also to use this concept of green foods in order to make trainings for the food and beverage industry in Chile and in other South American countries. And what we also, how we also want to keep this network alive is by organizing WebEx conferences in the future. So regular conferences in order to bring this family, green food family, together regularly and make an exchange here on knowledge, on best practice examples, etc.
Eh bien, merci à tous les quatre d'être venus dans cette émission. On a bien compris que la formation, hein, vous venez de le dire, est essentielle. La sensibilisation, comme disait Nicolas. Ensuite, plusieurs étapes. Un audit pour comprendre et agir éventuellement. Quand on agit, plusieurs solutions, plusieurs options s'offrent à vous. Et on retiendra ce que Jürgen disait sur effectivement les petites PME, puisque là on parlait, c'était un focus agroalimentaire. Beaucoup de petites PME familiales. Donc, des facilités finalement pour installer des énergies renouvelables et arriver à cet objectif zéro émission fossile de CO2 dans l'industrie agroalimentaire. Ce sera dans quelques décennies, mais en tout cas vous vous y employez chacun et je vous remercie. Nous voir ici sur le plateau de TV de la Galerie des Solutions. On se retrouvera un petit peu plus tard pour une nouvelle émission. Merci.